we are dedicated to the advancement of equal access for persons with disabilities, whether in the enterprise, in an educational setting, or one-on-one in the home. We're a unique organization in that we were started by a deaf couple in the 1980s. And we got the majority of our experience working with thousands of persons with disabilities around assistive technology and issues of accessibility in each of these environments. We're very proud to be hosting this important webinar, Configuring Google Docs for Use with Screen Readers. And this webinar is a part of a series we're putting on accessibility in this 30th anniversary of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. Some of our webinars are more technically oriented, as today's one is, on the accessibility of the G Suite, and we do have additional ones on the G Suite coming up. Microsoft Office, PDFs, web accessibility, be that on the desktop or mobile. Others centered on accessibility within the enterprise environment, whether in the public or the private sector, including one we did a few weeks ago entitled Supporting Employees with Disabilities in the Enterprise to ensure they have equal access to virtual meetings and to training on their assistive technology. Others, yet again, are on general accessibility issues for the disability community. One we did just last week called Voting Blind, Promises, Challenges, and Opportunities of the 2020 Voting Experience. So if you or your organization would like to receive training, we can provide it on any of these topics, whether in person or remotely. My contact details will be at the end of the presentation if you want to contact us for this presentation, the PowerPoints, the recording, or to perhaps talk about some more specialized training your organization or you would like personally. We do want to hear from you regarding what topics you would find interesting. So stay tuned as we build our webinar portfolio. I will be the moderator today. It's a little bit of webinar housekeeping before I turn it over to my colleague, Ben. We will have question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So if you'll hold your questions towards the end, or if you want to put them into the chat box, you can press Alt-H, H as in help, and we can then take your questions at that time. The last slide we'll have is where to get the transcript and the PowerPoint and the audio. We do have real-time captioning going on right now. If you want to turn on the subtitles via the caption button on the Zoom. I mentioned about the chat box with Alt-H. And during the question and answer session, it's Alt-A as an audio to unmute yourself and Alt-V to turn your video on and off. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Ben Soto. Ben?
Hello. Can everyone, or Harris, can you hear me? Okay. So my name is Ben Soto. I've been with TCS Access for about 10 years now. And for those joining us for a second time, welcome back. So today, just kind of looking at a few of the things that we're talking about, the Google Docs. So what is Google Docs? Kind of configuring it for the screen reader and focusing on how do you navigate its features with keystrokes. So whether you're trying to get help or just some common features in Google Docs, as well as just understanding some fundamentals of how to create an accessible document that you could then export to Microsoft Word if desired, or other formats. Also accessing the comments, the share, and some of the collaboration features, knowing that some of the features you might have to discuss with your respective department on how to best use some of those collaboration features. And so this webinar comes about, or rather this whole series comes about as Google Docs really starting to show up more in education, business, and government, and we've been getting a lot of inquiries and kind of seeing the different resources and screen readers used all across the board. So we kind of wanted to assemble all those individual resources together, kind of put them in one webinar, and kind of focus more on that keystroke aspect of it. So today, even though I am going to be using JAWS and Google Chrome with the Google Docs, for the most part, the keystrokes that I'll be giving you are screen reader agnostic. So most of these keystrokes, I'll kind of differentiate the ones that are like a JAWS specific keystroke versus an NVDA keystroke. But for the most part, we'll be giving you screen reader neutral keystrokes. And so even though I do have this PowerPoint up, I am going to be shifting over to doing the rest of the presentation live with JAWS and Google Chrome. So I'm just going to kind of start up my JAWS. And then Harrison, just and if
please wait.
hear,
Okay. JAWS home
so
use
JAWS is running, and I'm just going to kind of go to my start menu and start Chrome.
Cortana, C-A-R-B, Google Chrome, enter. New tab dash Google Chrome
so on
dash
occasion, I will be pressing the control key just to make sure that my screen reader isn't talking just for the sake of time. And there will be times where I will roughly tell you what the screen reader said, or I might press control just so that the whole thing doesn't read, and we'll be just kind of focusing on that one part that was the most important to tell where we were at. But at the moment, I do have a Chrome browser up, and instead of going to docs.google.com, I'm going to drive.google.com.
B. Enter. Blank. My Drive dash Google.
So the reason for
main
this
region
is that Google Drive overall tends to be keyboard friendlier and a little bit overall easier to use with the screen reader compared to the Google Docs file management system. And so Google Drive kind of becomes our hub. The way we set it up in that previous webinar where we turned off the virtual PC cursor with that by pressing Insert Z, or if you were using NVDA, that was the insert space, just to kind of be able to use the keystrokes that Google Drive has set out for us. And then we had pressed the letter V in order, V as in Victor, in order to change this view to this details view where we can just press up or down arrow to navigate the file structure. Now today, I'm going to show you how to create maybe just one document with Google Docs, and then I'm going to open up an existing document that has a handful of elements that we'll talk about how we can create or make accessible. So I am going to go down to a folder called Google Docs Webinar. So I'm just going to press down arrow a few times, and I will kind of interrupt the speech in order to get to that folder a little faster.
Sample file. Random Google Sheets, Google Forms, Google
so I'm
Docs
at my Google
Webinar,
Docs Webinar folder, pressing enter to move into it.
Enter. Folder dash Google Drive dash Google Chrome dash.
For the most part, let's say I wanted to create a file here that was a Google Doc. I can either use a keystroke such as Shift-T as in Tango to create that document, or I can move over to the New button. So I can either press Shift-Tab to eventually get there, or I can press the letter C for Create. So I'm going to press the letter C.
C, New button menu.
So I heard New button menu. I just pressed Control just to quiet it down. And I can press the down arrow a few times until I get to the Google Docs submenu. So I'm going to go to that Google Docs submenu.
Menu. File. Folder upload. Google Docs
Once I'm at the
submenu.
Google Docs submenu, I can press enter.
Enter.
And I
Blank
hear
document.
blank document. I could potentially press the down arrow to work from a template or start from a template, but I am going to just press enter for this blank document. And what should happen is I'll be in my new browser tab, and it should say Untitled.
Enter. Leaving menus. Untitled document dash Google Docs dash
So I
Google
heard
Chrome.
Untitled, Google Docs, and so for the most part, I am in now a blank Google document where I get to just kind of type and do whatever it is that I want. But one thing that I do have to set up is to make sure that I have my Google Doc set up to actually be able to read. So I'm going to go to a Google Doc that already has content in it so that we can test this a little bit better. And just to close out of this new document, I'm going to press Control W or Control F4 just to close out of this one browser tab to go back to my Google Drive.
Google Docs webinar dash Google Drive.
So I'm going to press the down arrow to gradually navigate to a file that I have for this presentation. In this case, I just called it Presentation City Light News.
Left, underline, Presentation City Light News created.
To open it up.
Enter. Untitled dash Google Chrome. Underline.
Pressing the
Document.
Control key a few times just to kind of mute what's going on. And for the most part, I now have a document where if I were to just try to down arrow through it right now, my screen reader shouldn't read anything. And so as my cursor is moving down, I'm not hearing anything in this document. And so this is where we do have to set up the screen reader support. And we can do this in a few different ways. So whether you're on a Chromebook or Windows, if you were to press Control, Alt, and Z as in zebra, that would turn on the screen reader support by default. So I'm going to press that keystroke, Control, Alt, Z.
Alt, Control, Z. Underline, presentation.
Now, I might need a few other things to do in order for my screen reader to start being able to read this document, because if I were to press the down arrow now, I'm still not getting anything. And so this is where if you're using JAWS, you would have to press Insert Z or your JAWS key and the letter Z in order to turn off the virtual PC cursor. Or if you're using NVDA, you would press Insert Space, and you should hear a pop if you're using NVDA. In the Chromebook, you wouldn't have to do any additional steps in order to get the screen reader to function here. So I'm pressing Insert Z, as in zebra.
Use virtual PC
and now if
cursor
I were to
off.
try to press the down arrow, I'm starting to hear City Light News, but just a moment ago, I don't think I heard blank. Oh, okay. So
new line.
Sometimes if your screen reader does start to act up and you're still not hearing anything, you might have to close down your Chrome browser. But in this case, we'll just kind of see how it goes. And worst case, we'll just restart the Chrome browser. But if I continue to press the down arrow.
New line. Issue August 2003.
I'm hearing text as I'm coming across it. Just kind of a heads up, some of your keystrokes, your screen reader keystrokes, may not function here the way that they do in, say, a Word document or email. So for instance, out of the box, I can't use my JAWS keystroke or my NVDA keystroke to read the current line. Like let's say if I try to press Insert Up arrow, it just tells me blank. Similarly, if I try to get the font attributes just out of the box, it's not going to tell me anything. So I might press Insert F as in Frank, and it's telling me no font. And so there are some adjustments that we might need to change in both the Google Docs side as well as just kind of noting that not all screen readers can do everything in Google Docs at this time. I'm just going to move real quick to another item in this Google Doc. I kind of noticed there's this other cursor in the document somewhere, and I may not know that as a screen reader user until I navigate to a line where maybe somebody else might be editing. So I'm just going to move there real quick because all these settings are kind of lumped together, and I'll show you in just a bit.
New line. New line. Heat Wave by Sonny. Harris Rosenzweig is editing
and so
this
I
paragraph.
hear, as I'm starting to get closer to another individual who's editing this document, I hear Harris Rosenzweig is editing this document. And so I might also start to hear if Harris were to leave this document or if he were to join this document, I might hear Harris Rosenzweig has joined this document or is now editing this document or has left the document. And so those are collaborator announcements. So the reason I mention all of this is we're going to go into that screen reader support setting area where we have a few different features that we're going to toggle on and off and maybe discuss a little bit about. So let's say I didn't use the Control-Alt-Z to turn on my screen reader.
Alt-Control-Z.
I could access the screen reader support or the accessibility settings under the Tools menu. So I can navigate there by pressing Alt-T as in Tango.
Alt-T, menu. Explore R Control plus Alt plus Shift plus I. 5 of 12.
And ultimately,
to
if
move
I
through,
let that read long enough, it should say Tools. But I'm going to up or down arrow to the accessibility settings towards the bottom of this list.
New spelling and accessibility
Pressing
settings C. Enter. Leaving menus. Accessibility
and I have
settings.
this accessibility settings dialog where I can start to tab through, and I should hear options such as turn on screen reader support. So I'm going to tab once.
List with 2 items. Turn on screen reader support checkbox not
so
checked.
In this case, I would want the screen reader support turned on. So I'm pressing the space bar, and as I continue to tab,
learn more about list with 2 items. Turn on Braille support
turn on Braille
checkbox not
support
checked.
if you're using a Braille display. Just kind of a heads up, even though you might get access to certain keystrokes, such as say line or being able to announce the current font attributes, you might lose some access to other keystrokes, such as being able to quickly identify a graphic and potentially select that graphic. Regardless of which screen reader you're using. So just kind of a heads up of the trade-off as you toggle the turn on Braille support on and off.
Turn on collaborator announcements
I'm going to leave
checkbox
the
checked.
turn on collaborator announcements so that way I can tell if Harris has jumped into the document or not, or if he's left. And as I continue to tab, there's an OK button that I would then press the space bar once I get to it.
Turn on learn more, cancel, OK button, space.
So I have my screen reader support on, and then I'd say probably the most useful keystroke I can think of is Alt/ or Alt//. And so what this would do is try to search through all of the menus up above. So I'm going to type, press Alt/.
Menu. Search the menus left
And
Alt
let's say I wasn't
right.
sure where the screen reader support settings were. I could type in maybe the word screen.
SCREEN.
And as I start to down arrow,
toggle screen reader support Control plus Alt plus C.
Could have
enable
accessed the screen reader support in that way, or if I continued to down arrow, I could have potentially found that accessibility settings that way. So I would say Alt// will be a very important keystroke. Whether you decide to memorize all the individual keystrokes, or if you decide to just use the Alt// in order to access most of those features up on the menu. Or if you just manually navigate the menus and look through them one menu at a time, any of those methods would work. I'm going to press escape twice just to try to get back to the document.
Escape.
And so now that we've configured our Google Docs to support the screen reader, the hope here is that I wouldn't have to do any of these steps until I open up my next document, in which case I might still have to turn off my virtual PC cursor or turn off that browse mode, depending on the screen reader I'm using. But in this case, now we have a document that looks like visually it has a heading. So I'm just going to move back to the top with Control Home, just kind of using my standard Windows navigation keys.
You are no longer editing near
So
collaborators.
it's letting
New
me know I'm
line.
not editing near a collaborator, which is good. I'm going to press down arrow a few times until I get to City Light News.
City Light
And I'm hearing
News.
City Light News, but I'm not hearing that it's a heading. So I might need to change this into a heading. I can either do that with my Alt/, and I can type in the word heading.
G. Apply heading 1 Control plus Alt
And the
plus 1
very
not
first
checked.
option I hear is apply heading 1, and it gave me a keystroke, Control Alt and the numeral 1. So I could press enter on that, but let's say I wanted to keep my font settings. So in this case, I happen to have a bold with extra about 16-point font. So I might press the down arrow just to see what my other choices are.
Update heading 1 to match.
So in this case, whatever I have in my document, font-wise, I would attach those fonts attributes to heading level 1. So I'm going to press enter on this update heading 1 to match.
Enter. Leaving menus.
Now, unfortunately, because I don't have that Braille support turned on, I can't use the say line or the repeat the current line command. So I will have to press the down arrow to move down 1, and then press the up arrow just to go back to the previous line.
Heading 1 City Light News.
Heading 1 City Light News. My topmost heading, like the name of this book or the name of the newsletter, that might be my heading level 1, and then my articles or the chapters might be all heading level 2s. So I try not to skip a heading level, such as like the heading level 1 and then skipping the heading level 4. I would try to avoid, actually, I would avoid that entirely. And we'll talk a little bit how we can navigate between the headings. So I'm going to press the down arrow a few times until I get to that first article.
New line. Issue August 2. New line. Heat wave
and
link
I heard
to
a lot
temperatures.
of new lines, so we'll talk a little bit more about the blank space after we address this heading level. So heat wave link to temperatures. I didn't hear heading, but just visually on the document, this does look a little bit bolded and maybe just a tiny bit larger than the rest of the article text. So I'm going to assign this line as a heading level 2, and you do not have to select any of the text in the line when you're assigning the headings, whether it's Google Docs or Word. When you assign that heading, it applies to the entire line. So I'm going to press Alt/, type in the heading,
G.
and I'm going to down arrow until I hear update heading 2 to match.
Update heading 1 to match. Apply heading 2 Control plus Alt plus 2 not
So I
checked.
could use that apply heading 2 for all my future headings that are level 2, but for this first one, I wanted to kind of keep the font attributes that are there.
Update heading 2 to match. Enter. Leaving
I can't really
menus.
double check unless I move away and back. So I'm just pressing down and then back up.
By Sunnydale. Heading 2 heat
So I
wave
got my
linked to temperatures.
heat wave linked to temperatures, and it said heading 2. And so, unfortunately, there's not like a really, I'd say a quick and easy way to navigate between these headings. Um, so, like we can't just use our screen reader keystrokes to easily navigate between those headings. But up in the accessibility menu, there are just a handful of keystrokes you can use to start navigating between these headings.
Alt Control H.
So
Heading
for
1 City
instance,
Light News.
if I were to hold down Control and Alt, and then if I were to press the letter N for next or P for previous, and then I do Control Alt H, it'll take me to the next heading. So just to kind of reiterate that, if I were to hold down Control Alt N and then press Control Alt P, H, it would go to the next heading. So Control Alt H, Control Alt N, Control Alt N, Control Alt H.
Alt Control H. Heading 2 heat wave linked to temperatures.
And just kind of a heads up, for some reason, if you have Braille support turned on, you might not necessarily hear which heading that you just navigated to, even though your screen reader will navigate to it. Just kind of a small heads up there. But let's talk a little bit about this extra spacing in the document. Certainly not like a super foul if it's there, but let's say you wanted to visually keep the spacing up above, but not have to press up or down arrow about 7 or 8 times just to get between these, the article and all the text. We could adjust the paragraph spacing. So I'm going to go ahead and try to delete all those blank lines in between the top of the newsletter, as well as and everything in between to the first article.
New line. New
so
line.
I'm going to press the delete key. I'm just pressing up arrow to get to these new lines, and then I'm going to start pressing delete to get rid of things.
Blank. New blank. New line. Blank. New line. By Sunnydale.
Unfortunately, I
Heading
don't have a
2 heat
real
wave.
good indication of what's there unless I were to move down and back up. So a little bit of trial and error here. But I'm going to press the up arrow in order to get rid of all the additional lines between City Light News and issue August 2003. So I'm going to start pressing up.
Issue August 2003. New line. New line.
So we had about
Heading
2
1
blank
City
lines between City Light News and issue August 2003. I'm going to just press down arrow and start to delete those 2 blank lines. Pressing delete.
New line.
One more.
Blank.
One more delete.
New line. Blank.
And now if I wanted to add additional spacing here, I could potentially navigate my menus up above, such as the format menu, or I can do my Alt / and maybe type in the word spacing.
G. Line spacing.
And as I start to down arrow, I start getting choices such as add space before paragraph, add space after paragraph, or I can try to do it all at once with a custom line and paragraph spacing. So I'm going to down arrow until I get to custom line and paragraph spacing.
Not checked. Line not checked. Line space. Custom line and paragraph
Pressing
spacing. Enter. Leaving menus. Custom spacing
so I have this
dialog.
custom spacing dialog. And if I tab enough times, I can get to a paragraph spacing before.
Close button. Line spacing edit. Paragraph spacing before edit. 0.
And
Type
for the
in
most
text.
part, this is measured in points. So approximately every 12 points would equal a line's worth of text or spacing. So I did have 2 lines before it, so I'm going to type a 24.
4.
And then I'm going to tab once over to after.
Paragraph spacing after edit. 0.
And I'm going to
Type
I
in
think
text.
I had about 3 lines of spacing after that. So 12 times 3, 36. I hope. And then
6.
I'm going to tab over to apply. And
Cancel button.
Pressing the space
Apply
bar
button.
or enter.
Space. Frame.
And
Above
now
colon
visually,
blank.
I have very similar spacing to what I had before. But now for a screen reader user or keyboard user, I only have to press up once and I'm at City Light News. And
Heading 1
from
City
here,
Light
I only have to
News.
press down arrow twice in order to get to the first article title.
Issue August 2003. Heading 2 Heat
So
Wave linked to
potentially saving
temperatures.
about like we'll say 7 to 8 key presses every time I'm trying to create that visual spacing. Just kind of throwing that out there, whether it's Google Docs or Word, just kind of reducing the number of key presses per document. So while we're here, we also have graphics further down below. And so by default, if I were to navigate to the graphic and my Braille support is turned off, I should at least hear that there's a graphic on this line. So I'm going to navigate past the article and get to the first graphic.
By sunny day, Harris wrote, was hot air from, said professor, department, mathematics, do the job. You are no longer editing near collaborators.
And then
Image
I hear
new line.
image new line. So in this case, this image does not have alt text. Some of the screen readers it's difficult to tell where you are in this line. So whether you're in front of the image on the left side or to the right of the image, I'm still hearing image. So I might think the image is just to the right. So this is kind of a little tricky when you're trying to edit the image by keyboard with a screen reader.
Harris
let's say
Rosen
I'm trying to just navigate to that image and I kind of know it's there. I just put it there.
You are no longer
I could potentially, like if I just pasted the image, I might be able to use my shift shift and right arrow in order to select the next thing on the line.
Image selected.
But let's say I wasn't too sure.
Escape.
Let's say I just
wrote,
wanted to almost guarantee that I selected the image. I can press Control-Alt-N for next and then Control-Alt-G for graphic.
Alt-Control-G. You are no longer editing near collaborators.
And now
image
I have
selected.
the image selected. And just kind of a heads up, if you do have Braille support, your image will get selected, but you might not hear anything. So once I have the image selected, I can either press my applications key, which is often 2 to the right of the space bar.
Applications. Context
and then I can
menu.
gradually up arrow until it says Alt Text.
Update norm. Select all text Control plus Alt plus Y.
Whether I press the applications key and up arrow to this Alt Text option, or if I press the keystroke Control Alt Y, or
escape.
Using the methods that we've looked at earlier, Alt//, and then I might try to type in the word Alt. Oh, I'm sorry. I might try to type in the word Alt as in Alt Text, and look around for the Alt Text option.
Save as my default style. Alt Text Control plus Alt plus Y.
I had muted it before I'd finished reading Alt Text, but it was the very first choice. And then I can press Enter.
Enter. Leaving menus.
Once I have this alt text dialog, I can tab over to the description edit. So I can tab a few times.
Close button. Title edit.
And then
description
on my
edit.
description edit for the alt text, I might put no more than a sentence or 2 at best, unless like what's in the image requires a lot of alt text. But in this case, this was a heat wave. There was a, we'll just say a thermometer at max temperature in front of a sunny city. And for here, in this description field, you can use the say line.
Thermometer at max temperature in front of a sunny city.
For these edit fields, you can repeat the current line, just not in the document unless the Braille support is turned on. But I'm going to tab over to the OK button, press R.
OK button.
And now
Space.
I'm going to navigate away from this image and then back to the image just to hear what it says.
Is a image alt text description : thermometer at max temperature in front of a
And
sunny
so
city. New
now I
line.
hear that that image was there, and I do get to hear the alt text. And let's say I was anywhere else in the document. So I just moved to
New
the very
line.
top by pressing Control Home. Let's say I were to just navigate to the next graphic. So Control Alt N as in Nancy, Control Alt G for graphic.
Alt Control G. Image alt text description : thermometer at max temperature in front of a sunny city.
And now I get to hear up that next graphic that was in the document as well as its alt text. So maybe one other thing to look at in this document, at least just time-wise, is our tables. I'm going to down arrow a few times to get to the table.
Image alt. Below is a table with city. New line. 3 by 8 table entered row 1 column 3.
I just heard 3 by 8 table. So 3 columns, 8 rows. And in this case, at least at this time, Google Docs typically doesn't treat the table like an HTML table. So all of the screen reader commands that we might typically use to navigate a table might not necessarily work here. So for example, if you want to navigate one column to the right, you would have to press the Tab key. So I'm pressing Tab.
USA
Actually,
selected.
I'm just kind of scrolling the screen a little bit just so that the table's in the center. So I'm currently on the second row of this table, and if I start to tab, I might hear some other content.
103
and I hear
selected.
103, but because I'm on the second row, I don't necessarily know what the column header of this table is. So I could press the up arrow until I get to the very first row. And unfortunately, the keystroke to get the table column header is kind of a lot. So it's Control Alt Shift, and then the letter T, and then Control Alt Shift, and then the letter C. So I'm going to try that out real quick. Control Alt Shift TC.
Alt Control Shift C. Column header highest temperature.
Column header highest temperature. And so by default, Google just assumes that your very first row of a table is your column header, even if it's not. And let's say I want to get that row header on the left side, whatever's in that first column, I'd have to press Control Alt Shift and then T, Control Alt Shift, then the letter R. So Control Alt Shift TR.
Alt Control Shift R. Row header podunk, USA.
And so at this time, that seems to be the most screen reader neutral way to get the column header and the row header. And then the other methods, at least that we've tried so far, don't seem to read the column header or the row header with their usual screen reader keystrokes. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. And I guess for the sake of time, we'll maybe talk about how you can share a document and then how you can comment on a document. So how we can share this document, typically we have a share button in the upper right corner where in order to get there, I can press Alt//
Alt//
and then so I have that search the menus.
Search the menus
and I'm
left.
going to type in the word share. And
share.
thankfully it's the only option available. So I'm going to press enter.
Enter. Leaving menus. Loading ...
And if I let
dialog.
this thing fully finish, it would tell me share with people, groups, dialog, and it would tell me that I'm in an email address edit field.
Add people and groups edit combo
and so
collapsed.
here I can type in an email address. such as harris@tcsaccess.com. Once I finish typing in that email address, I can press the tab key.
Grid. Add people and groups.
And now
edit combo
I have,
collapsed.
Harris's email address in my edit field. And unfortunately,
Blank.
I don't have a real good way to double check that.
Remove harris@access.com.
But you might be able to use Control left arrow, and depending on your screen reader, you might have some success in finding what you've typed there so far. But I can now press Tab in order to get to this permissions button, which is more of a combo box.
Editor change permission button. A menu. Press space to activate the menu.
So I'm going to press space on this permissions menu.
Space. Expanded. Menu. Menu for selecting permission
Control
roles.
Just to quiet it down, but I could, at this point, press up or down arrow to decide, oh, is Harris going to be someone who just views the document, or is he someone who can also comment on it, or at the extreme, can he edit it at the same time as I can, or just at all? And so I can decide, oh, okay, maybe I just want him to only be able to comment. So I'm going to press the down arrow until I get to commenter.
Commenter.
And then I'm going to press the enter key.
Enter. Leaving menus. Commenter change.
Harris is a commenter, or will be once I send this. And I can start to tab, and there's a message edit field as well as a send button. But I'm going to just tab over to the send button. Whoops.
Caps lock off. Dialog. Message edit. Grid. Feedback to active.
Send
button.
I'm pressing the space bar.
Space. Share to non-Google account dialog.
Warning telling me, oh, this person's not a Google account. Do you want to share it anyway? Like, yes.
Space. Dialog. Share.
And so off
Share
it goes
dialog.
and goes to Harris's email, where at this point he'll have the option of opening this document on his own browser. And then maybe just talking about comments. When we're looking at comments, you can add a comment by first selecting text or making sure your cursor is placed in the correct spot. So I'm just going to maybe navigate to the top of this document with Control Home.
103
and I'm going to
unselected.
Down arrow until it says, I just want to maybe change or maybe make a comment about the issue date.
Heading 1, issue August 2003.
So maybe I want to say, is this actually 2003 or is this the August 2004 issue? So I'm going to just insert a comment somewhere on this line. Preferably, I'm just going to highlight all the text. So I pressed home, and then I'm going to just press Shift End in order to highlight that whole line. And I can add a comment either with my applications key or the Alt / and then type in the word comment.
Add comment,
and
Control
I hear the
plus
keystroke
Alt plus
for
M.
it, Control plus Alt plus M, so I could do that in the future. I'm going to press Enter on this first add comment.
Enter. Leaving menus. List. Dialog. Comment draft edit
that
combo.
I'm in this comment draft edit combo. So here I can type in, shouldn't this be August 2004? And thankfully I can use my say line.
Shouldn't this be August 2004?
Just to double check what it is. But I'm going to tab over to the comment button. I'm sorry,
post comment button.
And then I'm going to press the space bar.
Space.
And
frame.
So now there's a comment here that's just unfortunately out of the box. I don't necessarily know what it says. So if I were to up or down arrow.
Comment start issue August 2003.
So let me down arrow back into that comment line.
Comment start issue August 2003.
So I
comment
know that
end
there's
new
a
line.
comment here, but I don't actually know what it says. So I could, if I knew the keystroke, I could press those keys in order to announce the comment. Or if I wasn't too sure what that keystroke was, I can press Alt/ and type in the word comment.
Alt/ T, add comment Control
And
plus
if I
Alt
start the
plus
down
M.
arrow,
Speak comment Control plus Alt plus A, Control plus Alt
kind of a
plus
lot
C.
to just speak that one comment to Control Alt A, Control Alt C. Think of it as announce comment in order to hear what that was. So I'm going to press enter.
Enter. Leaving menus. Frame. Shouldn't this be August 2004 by TCS access on 1:45 p.m. today?
At that point, I could announce that comment. And as I start to add additional comments, I can navigate between those comments by pressing keystrokes such as Control-Alt-N for next, Control-Alt-C for comment. So Control-Alt-N-C or Control-Alt-P for previous, and then Control-Alt-C for comment. So Control-Alt-P, Control-Alt-C to go to that previous comment. So just to try that out real quick, I'm pressing Control-Alt-N and then Control-Alt-C.
Alt Control-C. Comment start issue August 2000.
But now I have to do my Control-Alt-A and Control-Alt-C.
Alt Control-C. Shouldn't this be August 2004 by TCS access on 1:40?
Event list.
Empty.
Empty.
And I happen to have Kurzweil in the background somewhere, so I apparently started up Kurzweil.
File.
Context menu. File.
But that would be a way that you can navigate between those comments. And then let's say that you were trying to edit the comment that's already there. I'm going to type in Alt/ just to double check to see if there's one in the menus. Typing in the word comment. And I'm going to down arrow until I get to enter current comment.
Keep comment, open comment, enter current comment, Control plus Alt plus E, Control plus Alt plus C.
Comment would be Control Alt E as in Edward, Control Alt C as in comment.
Enter. Leaving menus. List. With one items. Mark is resolved in hide discussion.
To tab through my different choices. I'm just going to move my interface a little bit.
More options.
Under more
button
options,
menu.
I have the option to edit this comment, or if I were someone else, I could potentially reply to this comment.
Reply edit combo. To set the value, use the arrow keys or type the value.
I can just say yes. Yes, it should be.
Period. Reply to comment button.
So I'm tabbing to the reply to comment button, and then I'm pressing the space bar.
Space.
And maybe the last thing I'll show you before our questions is how would we save this file as a Word document? And just kind of the heads up, pretty much all of the accessibility settings that you've worked on, making the headings, the alt text, the paragraph spacing, that all carries over to your Word. Let me rephrase that. Should carry over to your Word document. And you might have a hit or miss depending on when you save that to a PDF. So if I were trying to get to that feature, I can press Alt F for file.
Alt F. Context
and if
menu.
For some reason your Chrome browser interjects or intercepts your keystroke, press Escape twice. And you can try pressing Alt F a second time.
Alt F.
And
menu.
It should give you that file menu. And I can down arrow until I get to download.
Share as. New and black. Open open. Make a copy. Download D black right pointing pointer submenu.
I'm going to press enter.
Enter. Microsoft Word
and
left.
The very first option is the Microsoft Word .docs. Let's say I wasn't sure where all of this was. Yep. We have our Alt /, and I can type in the word Word.
D Download as Microsoft Word left paren
And
dot
so you
docs
can
right
kind of tell
paren.
I'm really leaning on that Alt/ in order to access most of the content hidden within these menus. But certainly as you start to become comfortable with the keystrokes, there are different ways you can access the content. So I guess given our current time, I'm going to move over to the last page of our PowerPoint, where it'll have our contact information, and then we'll open up for questions and some responses. So I'm just going to turn off my JAWS for a moment, or
Here's something.
Unloading enter menu.
Ben, in the group chat, there was a call for if you could repeat the table keystrokes.
so table keystrokes, that will be Control Alt Shift, and then the letter T, and then the letter R. So you're still holding Control Alt Shift the entire time. TR for the table row header, and then Control Alt Shift TC for the table column header.
I wanted to just mention very quickly the Alt/ that Ben has been making such good use of. Alt Q is a similar keystroke in the Microsoft Office apps. So this is your time for Q&A. If you want to type in the chat box or if you want to unmute yourself. We have a hand raised from Charlie Short. Charlie, if you want to go ahead.
Yes, hi, my name is Charlie, and I'm a user of JAWS. I'm using 2020, of course. Now, how do I configure Google Docs to work with JAWS? How do I do that? I have to download it?
So for that, you'll do two things. When you get to your Google Docs, you'll have to press Control Alt Z in order to enable the Google Docs screen reader support. And then on your JAWS side of things, you'll have to press Insert Z to turn off your virtual PC cursor.
Okay.
And then at that point, it should respond. And if it doesn't, you might have to close the browser and reopen it.
I'm using Microsoft Edge, though. Is that?
Yep, that should still work.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you very much.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you, Charlie. Any other questions whatsoever?
And I guess while we're waiting for the next question, just kind of rereading Harris's email address. So if you are looking for the training resources or the transcript, please email Harris at tcsaccess.com. So HARRIS at tcsaccess.com.
And while we're waiting, Ben, I remember we did the experiment where we downloaded it as the Word document, and even the conversion of this Google Doc to a PDF. Do you remember how well that worked?
I think we lost the alt text and several, and then the table tags were pretty messed up if we went straight from Google Docs to a PDF.
Yes.
Versus Google Docs to a Word to a PDF.
Thank you. Well, you learned me too.
So don't be shy if you have additional questions on anything related to Google Docs. As you can see, those hotkeys are quite challenging as compared with some of the similar hotkeys you would have to do to find those objects, like an image in a Word document if you were using JAWS.
And maybe one other thing to kind of mention with the collaboration is, even though multiple people can view a single document, it may not always be the best thing for a company or a department to actually everyone be editing at the same time. And so that's maybe something you might have to discuss with your department or organization of how do we best use the collaboration? Is one person editing and everyone else just kind of commenting and viewing it? Or do you actually try to risk it with multiple editors? Just because kind of the heads up, if one person starts deleting all this text, you cannot use undo to get that text back. So it gets pretty messy pretty fast. So just kind of throwing that out there. But I see two participants have raised their hand.
Yes. Chris Foster.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. Hi, Chris.
Hi. So I wanted to just get a little bit of clarification. I know that when we started the webinar, you started in Chrome, and then a user or a participant just said that they're using Microsoft Edge with Google Docs. Can you clarify the most desired the most desired browser for using WebDocs, and then the middle desired, and then the least desired?
I would say at least what I've seen so far is Chrome, at least for the Google Docs, most desired, but Microsoft Edge, or at least the Microsoft Edge you can get outside of, say, the government, because it'll have the latest version, that seems to work very well, about just as well as Chrome for Google Docs. Where I haven't tried Internet Explorer in some time and Firefox even longer. But yeah, Edge and Chrome, the latest versions of each seem to be working equally as well at the moment.
Just a point of clarification, and this may be old documentation, but at one point I saw that Firefox was the preferred browser for Google Docs, and I'm going to assume that that's quite old and out of date.
I'd say that might need to be tested, but I haven't tried it in some time.
Goes to show the challenges we have as AT users and trying to keep track of 3 different browsers. Thank you for that question, Chris. We have Maria, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Am I muted now or no?
Yes, you're good. We can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. Just a quick warning. I am really basic on this. I have not done one yet. So when Ben was demonstrating the ability to share the document, and he was writing the email address, Teresa's address, I heard Jill say collapse, and I never heard like what I'm used to hearing when I'm entering new information, a forms mode. Does this have any way of figuring out that I'm really in an editing mode?
I might need to redo that just to hear it myself, but I think because we have that virtual PC cursor off, I don't recall hearing the normal forms mode pop now that I'm thinking about it.
It didn't, and I wonder also, when it says collapse, is it, I mean, I can't figure out sometimes when a collapse allows me to do something. I see that in Dropboxes, and normally I had to press enter to hear that I am going to be able to enter information, but I'm not saying it specifically of this Google Docs, but in general.
Yeah, I guess it might depend on the type of object. Google Docs, now that I'm thinking about that email address field, it's almost like your edit field is both an edit and a combo box. Almost like your autocomplete is your combo box that's like, oh, here are the email addresses that you could put in here. And once you finish typing an email address, it collapses that autocomplete combo box, which is a little bit tricky because then you're not fully sure where you're at. So that is a good observation now that you're mentioning it.
Thank you.
Let's see.
Thank you, Maria.
Thanks.
It is 2 o'clock. Maybe we'll take one last question if anyone has anything. It was a pleasure to be with you. Again, my name is Harris Rosenzweig, Director of Accessibility. If you would like the PowerPoint, which summarizes many of the keystrokes that Ben was talking about, I'm Harris, Harris, at tcsaccess.com.
Yep, and thanks for having us, and thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you next time.
Take care, everyone.
Berkeley of News app, audio settings app, alerts, Jim app, videos app, close alerts.